Great. Good morning, everyone. It's February 9th, 2024. It's 9:03. This is a meeting of the Weston Connecticut Board of Education Financial Facilities and Operations Committee. We have a quorum, and the first item on the agenda is an update of facilities and ground maintenance. Hi, Mike.
Hey, everybody. All right, it's been another quiet month facility-wise. Knock on wood, hopefully this continues. Typical repairs, typical maintenance. We were hopeful that the winter was going to be at an end and we could start making our turn to the ball fields and things like that, but it looks like Tuesday is going to alter all those things. I don't really have much more to report on. Like I said, nothing major has broken down. We haven't had to really do just routine issues, water issues. One thing I do have to report is personnel-wise, we're going to be down a few people, 3 guys for roughly about 6 weeks, some a little bit less, some a little bit more. We're not at this point planning on bringing anything temporary in for help. Being the time of year that it is, we'll be able to move some grounds people around and fill our buildings. That's really all I have, guys. I don't have anything substantial to report.
Are they temporarily not available, or is it?
It's medical issues.
Okay.
That will be out for roughly about 6 weeks, give or
Okay.
take. One guy was in an accident, so he'll be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But like I said, the time of year that we're in, we can handle the fulfilling of the buildings, so we'll be okay.
Yeah, Mike, you want to talk about what we're doing to fill those roles?
What's that, Phil?
Can you just talk about how the movement of the shifting of personnel to cover the staff being out?
Yeah, so basically we have a gentleman out at the middle school. So taking one of our grounds guys and moving him into the building in the morning, because the person that is out was the morning shift. So we shifted one groundsman into the building 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The second shift custodian will be covering both shifts on the Wednesday in order to not burn him out. As we get closer to better weather and we get closer to athletics and things like that, we may require him to come in a little bit more, but keep him healthy. At the high school, another gentleman, the middle shift will be out for roughly six weeks, and another groundsman. In between, will be given the about 3-4 hours a day, middle of the day, some assistance to whatever needs to be done, whether it's cafeteria or just general items. And then our lead of grounds will be out for roughly 6 weeks. And so the remaining groundsmen that are not in the buildings, as I will be running that crew. So that's how we're going to man the buildings and man the positions.
And is that overtime, or is it all within their current responsibilities?
It's all within current responsibilities, other than the middle school for the Wednesday at this point. That'll be overtime just to cover the double shift. And it might turn into a little bit additional overtime as we get closer to spring sports if gentlemen aren't back in time. But at this point, this is how we're going to run. So I don't foresee any more changes, but more to follow.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Great.
I didn't hear Hurlbut or WIS are affected, nor the projects you have there. So that's good news, because I know you're working on your projects there.
Right. Yeah. WIS and Hurlbut at this point, not affected.
There we go. Okay. Peter, discussion on the Healthy Building Initiative.
Oh, sure. And unfortunately, Michael, I forgot to CC you on my sort of meeting notes from yesterday, but I'll give you a debrief here. So I thought that this would be a good line item for multiple reasons. One is that we have short-term work that we can accomplish to satisfy sort of the return on investment questions about LED lighting or HVAC. And Mike and the representative from UConn State of Connecticut are working through the assessment, right? There's some paperwork snags, but the data will get released and we'll get a really good idea in real time of our energy use and then ongoing. So that's a good plan, right? So that will just give us an idea as we are today, but moving forward as we implement things, sort of how effective it is in real time and over a course of 3 or 6 months. So that was one initiative. Two is because we're looking into fiscal year 25, right? And there's some line items in the capital budget that involve lighting and HVAC and repairs. There's no reason not to start thinking about that as a separate line item because we're going to return back to that during the course of the year, right? As we make these investments and repairs. So this should be an ongoing sort of 5-minute discussion in this committee. And thirdly, I had a good call with the Department of Energy, and now Mike's up to speed on that. And they offered InSense free test bed, will be the test bed for the Department of Energy for some tunable lighting and in window, or I believe a separate unit AC, and they'll be able to do some work in April and then do testing in these chosen classrooms. And then return back and then put some sensors in some improvements on their nickel, and then return back in the fall and see how much energy that classroom saved and how cleaner the air was in that particular classroom. So we have some candidate classrooms. Mike's going to look into that on Monday. And it's free to us, and it gives us sort of the one test bed in the country of how to do healthier buildings in the high school, in a classroom. And I thought that data point would be useful for as we move forward in the EOC, right? Can we make these investments on scale, just duplicating what's done in the classroom, but over multiple classrooms? So that's quite an interesting opportunity for our school district, both operationally, but also for student health, and also gives us a stake in the ground that we're like a green thinking school. The last element would be if we choose the classroom right, because the sensors and things can't be tampered with. They're not intrusive. But if we choose the classroom right, and it's a green team or sustainability team or environmental science team cohort in that classroom, you actually have an educational component, right? They can actually see in real time how sensors work, how power measurement works, and they can get directly involved. And at the end of both initiatives, we get really good bar charts and line graphs, and we can now explain the initiatives to the public, right? Because this is all public domain information, and they get a really good presentation on our Healthy Buildings initiative. That was accomplished in the last couple of days, and the 2 action items are, firstly, for the CCAT, which is the State of Connecticut Energy Assessment. Mike and Amy are put in contact, have to do some paperwork. They have to figure out how to get access to some data and measure it and assess it. And that can be done within the next 5 weeks. So we can have our first bar graphs and line graphs and stuff for the public Board of Ed meeting in March. And then Mike has to do a little walk around at his convenience, maybe Monday, take some photos of the target classrooms just so the Department of Energy engineers get an idea of what's there and start planning around the install. And we can also report that this is up and running, not in the March Board of Ed meeting, but maybe the April Board of Ed meeting, because they'll probably have it installed during the break in April when no students are in the classroom. Did I miss anything, Mike, or did I cover it all?
I believe you covered everything that you had to discuss with me, so that's about what I got out of it.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Peter, really quickly, does your email just summarize what you just said? And
I did.
Okay.
Right. And I think I did it to maybe Mike got a copy and superintendent got a copy, because I didn't want to make it a game, right? Now that we've had our meeting, I can send it because I just discussed it. So I'll go back and give you the contact names and the positions and the organizations that I spoke to, so you have a copy of it yourself.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks. Phil, the monthly financials,
Sure. Just want to highlight the significant changes for this month. The first significant item that we have, well, let me just step through each item. So we have some savings in for salaries. We have FMLA savings, and we have some adjustments for turnover. As it relates to benefits, this is a significant change, and this has to do with our other post-employment benefit. So I'm making this adjustment right now. So during the budget, the plan was that we were going to have about $340,000 as a contribution from the OPEB trust fund, which would pretty much cover the cost, the retiree cost for health insurance and dental. So we recently changed insurance plan. So we're seeing lower premiums for retirees. In addition, we're also seeing a change in the census. Those two items combined lead me to believe that the ultimate funding from the trust fund will be less than we have budgeted. So I'm just making this adjustment right now. And last night, the actuary did present to the Board of Finance the report. I do need to have a follow-up conversation with Rick, just to talk about the funding and future plans. This may also have an impact to our FY25 budget. Again, we'll have to firm all that up, and we'll have those discussions. Other services. Last month, I did kind of hinted that we'll be having some changes to the tuition and settlement line. As usual, anything related to SPED PPS is individualized, and we just had some placements, recent placements, that's pretty much triggering the slightly over budget cost. Revenue offsets, based on our initial filing for the excess cost grant, we do anticipate, based on the individual cost for students, that will be receiving slightly more than we had budgeted. So Michael, I know the excess cost is new to you, so just to kind of give you a flavor as to what that is. So this, for any cost which is 4.5 times the state determined per pupil expenditure, we do get a reimbursement. So for example, for this year, the 4.5 times amounts to about $115,000. For any cost that's above $115,000, we do get a reimbursement from the state. So the anticipated reimbursement for this year is going to be about 68%. And just to kind of give you an idea as to how difficult it is to kind of budget for this, last year, there was indication from the state that they were redoing the excess cost grant formula, and the anticipated reimbursement for districts such as ours would be about 80%. So the swing went from 80% to 68%. Luckily for this year, we were conservative in our estimate, where we kept the reimbursement rate similar to what it has historically been, because there has not been any significant increase with the overall funding for the excess cost grant. The big item here, another big item.
So the reduction at the state level is a budgetary reduction, or what is the formula change?
So it all depends on the level of requests for reimbursement.
Across the state?
Across the state.
Okay.
Across the state.
Yeah, okay.
So as you guys may recall, at our budget discussion meeting, we did agree to pre-purchase a few items for $350,000. This report pretty much assumes that will be a spend. What I've also done for our discussion is that I've earmarked approximately $230,000 for capital mitigation. This, of course, is really pending any discussion with the Board of Finance, and I know it tends to be a little bit tricky as it relates to this topic. But for our purposes, I've just earmarked, I put a hold of $230,000, and that is included in our special project line, object code 4600. So the net of all that is currently showing a deficit of approximately $37,000. Again, it's still early in the year. I'm continuing to monitor a few accounts. I am monitoring really closely utilities, because we may have some variability there. So just a reminder, last year, or this last calendar year, we did max out on our virtual net metering credits, and we reached our cap, our reimbursement cap, in August of last year. So we weren't paying for any generation at the virtual net metering plants, which is the solar plants. So we weren't paying for any generation costs there since August. So I have to ultimately see where that is trending. In addition to that, we also had credits that was carried over into the new fiscal year, favorable credits to the new fiscal year. So I do need to work up in the upcoming months an analysis in terms of utilities and how everything is trending. So I'm monitoring that. So I'm not that concerned about the deficits that we're showing right now.
Phil, so two minor questions on that. Just how much of a swing could that be, right? In terms of those two drivers impacting the actual cost. And then when do you expect to have basically a better handle on that? Like,
yeah,
how far into the process?
Sure. I'm asking if you could, Mike, just give me another month or so just to kind of work before I don't want to kind of put a number out there right now. Just give me a month to kind of do a further analysis, because it's like multiple pieces, right? In addition to that, in November of last year, our supply rates also increased. So I have to kind of take everything together and see where we will be as well. And we also I also need to take a look at the natural gas usage as well. Of course, this winter has been really mild, or favorably mild. So I do want to see what that impact will be in terms of the natural gas costs. Also, to point out, the natural gas rate, generation rate, our supply rate also increased this past November. So I do need to take a look at that.
And just so you know, last night with the Board of Finance meeting, and Phil presented to the board that we anticipate using this surplus, or a portion of the surplus, to pre-purchase some items, which Phil just described, and there were no questions about it. So other than Roan's question to you, which was really not that as much as his questions regarding budgeting and surpluses going back the last 5 years. So I know in the past we've returned the surplus in total to the town, with a couple of exceptions over the last 5 years. But we did tell them we anticipate using at least that, in round numbers, $350,000 to pre-purchase some items, and it didn't seem to evoke any questions. So whether or not they'll approve that and approve any other allocations of the surplus to capital, we'll see. But the alternative is we return the surplus to the town and we just go back to our original budget presentation and not reduce the budget. So it's kind of a wash regardless of what we do. Any more, Phil?
Just the dental claims, there's no surprises here. Things are trending pretty much in line with historical averages.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is, I just want to stress, it's a delicate issue to talk about, is there are some things going on in special ed and that's why we kind of have to wait. There are meetings and things going on right now that might affect our bottom line this year, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
And we're talking, significant dollars.
Okay.
When you outplace kids.
Item number 4, discussion on in-district transportation contract.
Oh, that's right. So at the last meeting, I did mention that I was going to have a conversation. So last meeting, I mentioned that the first year increase was going to be in the double digits. I had a conversation with First Student to pretty much see if they could improve on that number. I don't have a presentation today specifically because I want to get a sense as to what the appetite is for an extension compared to going out a bit, because I do not want to put first student in an uncompetitive environment, knowing that we know what their increase is going to be. Suffice it to say that our first year increase will not be as significant as what I reported and what we currently have in our budget. And also for the remaining years increases will be more in line to increases that we've seen in the past. So to put the first year in perspective, a lot of neighboring districts have seen increases in the range of 13+%. What First Student is proposing is not anywhere close to that. So I think what we have with First Student, I think what we have right now, it's favorable, right? And I would recommend that we do an extension. You know, it becomes problematic when we change transportation providers. And I think as much as it's been a little bit bumpy this past for a few months or so, where we are right now and the effort that First Student has made over the past couple of years, you know, just in terms of their active in recruitment, has really been great. You know, you guys know our drivers, right? You see what the impact is when we have to change the driver on the route and how the families react to that. You know, so there's a lot of benefits in maintaining that relationship that we do have with First Student. You know, they work with us, and I would definitely say that First Student is truly a partner. And I just would like for us to continue that partnership again. So what we're seeing over like a 5-year stretch in terms of the average increase is really in line to what we have seen based on this last renewal.
Is there a way, if we're going to do this, and we're going to ask First Student for an extension, is there a way to mitigate their moving drivers back and forth between towns? I mean, we know because they just took over the contract in Westport.
Correct.
And so, Michael, I mean, you've talked about that stability of drivers, of the driver, you know, over and above just the number of drivers, just the stability of the driver, because they do create a bond with the child. It would be good if that's part of the conversation, that we don't want you to move driver A between communities.
So let's talk. Let me try to talk about that as best as I can. So our contract with First Student says that they have to provide us with drivers, right? And so they do. It's a union shop, so they do have a union. In addition to that, what First Student also has a particular set of drivers that they consider to be travel drivers. Travel drivers are under a separate contract, which makes it difficult for us to say these are our drivers, and we do not want for them to say, because they have strong language within their contract, these travel drivers, that's really punitive. And it does come at a cost. So if First Student satisfies their obligation in terms of providing us with a full fleet of drivers, so to speak, they've technically covered their contract. And I don't think what happened recently, it was a snowball effect, right? So we had a death. Then we had drivers that we had to move. Then we had drivers who decided to change careers. So everything happens, not something happened sort of kind of out of sequence, but it kind of compounded to where we were at the beginning of January. So where are we today? Today, we're back to where we were. We have a full fleet of drivers. Not saying that we don't have the occasional driver calling out, but we do also have spares as well. But at any given point, we may have a driver out and we may also have a spare out. So so it's a roundabout way of saying that it's multiple contracts, and we have to try to be mindful of that. And I think, Lisa, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I have a question, and I understand about the travel drivers because I learned more about the travel drivers this year than ever. And so this is my question. If we know this is the travel driver piece is in the contract, and if we want to continue with First Student for another year or two, can we amend certain components of the contract to address some of our concerns in that area and perhaps others? For example, I think that we probably work very hard, if not the hardest, in our district to make the bus drivers feel part of our community. You and I are always over there. We know them all by name, everything. And when you get a travel driver that, let's be blunt, they don't want to go because they love our environment. So why do we, can we amend the contract or say we'll go forward, but we don't want travel drivers. We really spend a lot of time cultivating and recruiting our own people. I don't know if that's a thought.
Yeah, honestly, Lisa, so the reason why we ended up with travel drivers was because we had a shortage.
Yeah, I understand.
So First Student placed the travel drivers there because we had a shortage and they had an obligation to us to ensure that we have pretty much a driver in every seat.
Well, no, that's not right, Phil. We didn't have a shortage. They had a shortage. That's the
Right. No. I'm not saying that we did. I'm saying that they
No, but no, what I'm saying is they're obligated to provide a driver to us. When they move drivers around, it's destabilizing. Some people view it as destabilizing. There's no continuity with, driver A that, to Michael's comments, a month ago when we last talked about this. It doesn't hurt to do what Lisa's suggesting is we want stability of drivers. We don't want driver A to be moved. We don't want drivers in and out. And I just, how do you move a driver who's never been into Weston saying, okay, today you're going to Weston and you're going to be driving route A. He's never seen the roads. I mean, this is not.
But if I may, I feel like it's the reverse. Like, and Phil is right. We had problems. There was problems post-COVID. We needed drivers, whatever. But it's the reverse. I don't really see it going the other way. And correct me if I'm wrong, Phil. Our travel drivers have gone away from us. They're going to Westport.
That's my point.
But if they bring in back other people, it's just.
All right. So, we can always put language in the contract, and I think we do have language in the contract that addresses this. We can ensure that it's highlighted in the contract that this is really a requirement if we are to do an extension. But just like with any other industry, there's always going to be turnover and stuff like that. But I think First Student has done truly a good faith effort in ensuring that we do have drivers that we need.
I'm not suggesting they haven't. I'm just suggesting that if we're going to open up a contract, we might as well, ask for whatever it is you want to ask for, and not be silent on it. This is an issue or has been an issue, so let's just address it.
Sure, I'll ensure that part of it is in the contract. So if there's a general consensus, I can reach out to First Student, and I know it ultimately requires. I think it may require, because of the cost, a full vote on the board. And then at the next meeting, if the committee consents to do an extension, at the next meeting, I can present their financials, and also maybe a contract as well.
Phil, what are you recommending in terms of the term of the extension?
I am going to go with a 5 year, because the 3 year is significant. It's a significant increase. Let's say a 3% increase in all 3 years, or in the 2 later years.
So you're saying if we do 5, we get a cheaper increase?
It's a cheaper increase over the average. And in addition to that, right? So it's
like a TV ad.
Huh? It's
like a TV ad. And if you do this.
Yes.
But so how much money? Like, I wonder what the percentage is. Is it like 3% as opposed to?
Exactly. What's the difference between, let's say, it sounds like the 1 year they're just gonna, hit us with a huge increase. So what is the difference between 3 and 5 years? And then remind me again, Phil, of when the fleet actually, so what are we bridging toward? When does the fleet have to be sort of turned over and electrified, let's call it?
Yeah, so
10 years from
that's right. So that's another reason why I'm also
Oh,
recommending
you're right.
When is that?
Yeah,
What year is that?
I'm gonna get in a minute. So that's
Okay.
another reason why I'm recommending that we go with a 5 year, right? So it gives us enough time in partnering with First Student to see how do we transition to having a zero emission fleet. So that date is 2040.
Oh, 2040.
Yeah.
Okay.
2040. It's
Oh, I
not
thought it was
35.
It was 20, 40, 30.
I thought it was
35.
2030 or
Yeah, so did I.
2035.
Yeah, I read it, and it's two parts to it. You have to have, so by 2035 you have to have low emission vehicles. By 2040
Oh, good. Okay.
there have to be zero emission vehicles. So that 5 year span really doesn't do anything. And I think we do have and I think low emission is like low sulfur diesel, which we currently utilize in our fleet. So we have some time, right? That 5 year span allows us enough time for the town to plan in terms of what the location is going to be to store these vehicles. In addition to that, it also allows us enough time to work on the infrastructure component of it, which will be big. What we're going to include in this contract is a clause that says at any point over the next 5 years, we could elect to add a zero emission vehicle to our fleet. I don't have the cost, what that would be in terms of full contract length, but I can point out that currently the cost for an EV is pretty much double the cost of a diesel. So it is going to be a significant increase, and I think, and so another component of this, and yes, Steve, it's always the end, right? We have to time whatever we're doing in terms of any available grant funding that's there on the federal level. All the first rounds of funding has been geared towards what's considered to be environmental justice communities, which Weston doesn't qualify as an environmental justice community. So it's truly it will just allow us more time working with First Student, working with the town, working with the green team to kind of come up with a plan in terms of how we move forward. Because the big portion of it is going to be the location to store the vehicles and also to bring in the infrastructure.
So
Yeah.
Phil, it sounds like we have potentially 3 more contract renewals. Let's say this 5 year, 5 year extension that we've done at least historically. So it sounds like we have potentially 3 of these upcoming. The current fleet does satisfy, let's say, any of these low emission standards that are going to set in 2035. So we're not going to see necessarily that cost, let's say, which, will take effect, I guess, in the third contract, if we assume, again, 5 year contracts in 2040. So for now, we're okay. In the current contract, though, Phil, do you have a sense of what the average, and you may not want to talk about it or give us the numbers right now, and you may want to put something together, but do you have a sense of what the average annual increase will be in a 3 year versus a 5 year extension?
There's a difference of about $50,000 between a 3 year and a 5 year. Average.
Per year.
Average.
Yeah, per year.
Yep.
Okay.
No.
So again, I can work all this up, and listen, when I had the first conversation with First Student, I'm just like, what's going on? And they did outline all the reasons for it, but I can definitely say that the rate that they're proposing for the first year is a good rate. It's lower than what other derogators have seen in their recent either renewal or our new contracts.
Look, it's stability. There's a value to stability. So if that's the difference, or if it's in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively minor, very minor.
Agree, Steve. Agree.
Yeah.
So First Student is motivated to have a 3 or 5 year contract, and they're motivated to create stability. That's our underlying assumption, right? So
That's correct.
My only creative thought for stability, because I'm a big fan of Bus 17. I've seen the same driver now like 6 years. Shout out to Bus 17, because that's Georgetown Road, right? It goes up and down it. And this is just out of the box thinking, can we do like a loyalty plan, like a frequent driver miles, where they accrue miles for coming back to us, even if they're substitute drivers? They go, I want to go to Weston because I accrue frequent driver miles. I don't know. It's just an out of the box idea that we can implement.
Absolutely, Peter. We can create incentives for the drivers. I think other towns have done that in terms of a premium, a pay rate premium. But of course, any incentives that we do add will come at a cost. And if the district decides that, hey, we want to have these incentives to ensure that we have that stability, we could do that. And we could definitely look into that cost as well. But just know that it will come at a price.
Yeah, it might be interesting as a way to avoid having to deal with travel drivers.
Right.
Because regardless, I have to say, I think that they are very responsive. I agree with Phil. These bus drivers, I have heard the way they talk about our children in between each other. They are really wonderful people, and we have to figure out a way to ensure that we spend a lot of time trying to keep them with us. I mean, we got a father that's driving a bus that his wife saw the sign outside and said, you can do this. You work from home. Get out there in the bus. He's a great guy.
It truly is. And I think we have 2 members from the community who are also drivers.
Well, and one person who is a travel driver has to drive to Westport now. He works in our high school cafeteria in between. I said with Chartwells, I said, please don't leave. It's not that far. Come up. We need you. He goes, oh, I don't think I'll coming back. They really need me. I don't want to. He said he wants to stay with us. So we have to figure out a way to mitigate some of that in the contract.
I will have that discussion and I'll report back.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, Peter and Michael, we're telling Phil to go forward with a conversation with First Student.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. Good. Just on other upcoming, this Lisa just brought up Chartwell's contract. When is that up?
It's up at the end of this fiscal year. We're working on doing an RFP. We have to get an RFP out soon. If we're ultimately going to go with an RFP, because again, as you mentioned, it's disruptive. So we have to start doing that. We're also, I don't want to talk about that one yet, but I'll report back next month.
Okay, great. Anything else from anybody? Peter, Michael, anybody on this?
No, I would just reinforce what you said, Steve, as well as Lisa. There's a lot of value, obviously, to stability of drivers, Phil. So if we can press the issue in the negotiation, that would be, I think it would just relieve a lot of angst for a lot of not only the students but the parents as well. So
Yeah, I mean, it's the first thing kids see and the last thing they see. First thing they see going to school and the last thing they see going home. So
right,
part of the whole experience. It's important.
Yep. Okay.
All right. With that, so the last item is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any changes or?
One last thing, Steve. I think weren't there other contracts that were up? I think food service. Were there?
That's Chartwell.
That's Chartwell. Okay, got it. And then the cleaning. I think the cleaning service as well. what was that? There was another contract that was up.
I
Phil.
think we did agree to do an extension of that one.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure all those bows were tied. So, okay, great.
Are you gathering any proposals, or do we need to go through that process? Or are you?
No, we're not doing an RFP on the clean end. We're just we're pretty much agreeing to do an extension as well, just for continuity. I just want to point out that when we did change, maybe 5 years ago, that first year was painful. It was a very painful year. It took us a very long time to get us to where we are. We have strong lead custodians, or the strong custodians in general, and they own their building, and they have a high level. Their standard is pretty high, and they get on the cleaning company. So we've made some changes recently to kind of improve on that, but it's just constant. It's constant, but it's better. And everyone has it's a challenge, right, in terms of staff and anything. Some of the struggle that everyone is seeing across all the industries of staffing, but things are better, and we're better we're better this year than where we were last year, and it continues to improve.
And I will echo that. I'm sure, I think Mike feels the same way. The one thing I have been more impressed with is, I'm pretty direct and they show up and they know who I am. And I, out of all the contracting people, I've seen them the most, and they know, and they'll say, and they'll ask me, are you happy? What's going on? Because as Phil said, that year we changed, and I'm sure Mike can attest, was extremely difficult.
Did I miss an acronym about 5 minutes ago about food service? Was that the contract that was mentioned?
Yeah, that's Chartwells. That's
Okay.
the contractor.
And is that been through a rigorous process, or that's a default, or are we about to sign it? Where I
No,
just,
no,
for some
Phil-
reason, it just went right
no.
by me.
No, Phil. Well, Phil said he's considering an RFP for that. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that would be that rigorous process you're talking about, Peter.
Okay.
So the last item is approval for our January minutes. Are there any changes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second, Peter,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye. Anything else? Thanks, everybody. See you Monday night.
Thank you guys.
Thanks
Have
a
a
lot.
great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.